Working Fans Podcast. Cool.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Coming down 3, 2.
Welcome back for another week of the Working Fans Podcast. This is AJ. I'm the former wrestler. We've got Dave, the ultimate fan, here with us. As we do every week, our producer Joe likes to make us sound good and makes us look way more professional than we actually are. As always, you can find us on Twitter, that's @FansWorking, Facebook, Working Fans Pod. We've got email where you can reach out to us and please contact us to let us know what you think of the podcast and for any ideas that you might have. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram where you can keep up with us at workingfanswrestling_pod. And then you can now listen to us on all major platforms, including Anchor.fm. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Apple Podcasts, and you can actually check us out on YouTube. Now, it's important when you go onto the Apple Podcasts and YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a rating, let us know what you think so you can help us out and we can continue to do what we love and bring you guys in as fans.
Hello, everybody. This is former WWE superstar Al Snow, and you're listening to the Working Fan Podcast.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Working Fans Podcast. This is Dave with AJ, and we have a true legend today. Guy who's competed in WWE, ECW, and all over. Al Snow. Actually, this guy also might be one of the only guys to get his doll banned from Walmart. Al? I actually was reminded about this the other day. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still on the list of, I believe it's 27 things that Walmart refuses to sell as it is endangerment to society, and I'm number 5 on that list. I was beat out by pregnant Barbie. She's number 1.
That's not an easy list to crack into.
No, it's not. It's not. And, when you really think about it, I mean, you can still, I believe, go find an assault rifle and ammunition to dismember your, victim if you want. But God help you if you get my action figure. That will be a training manual for future spousal abusers.
Oh, my God. That's tremendous. I forgot all about that.
Al, on a personal note, I want to actually thank you for coming up with the collar and elbow clothing line. I worked for 10 years. I was trained by Adrian Street, and I'm 6'3" and about 280 pounds. And to have clothing that I can wear that is comfortable and still fashionable at the same time, I appreciate that. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. I owe a lot of that to my partner Rod and really our designer Dean Whitaker. He's the magic in the sauce. He's amazing. He's so great at, coming up with designs that kind of, if you're a wrestling fan, you get it. And if you're not a wrestling fan, you just go, oh, that's cool. I really like that. And you don't even, you don't know what it's about or anything.
You were trained by a gentleman named Jim Lancaster. Is that correct?
Yes.
What was his background? I don't know much about Jim.
Jim had started in the 70s and was pretty much a journeyman wrestler. He worked all the territories. He worked pretty much in the mid-card. And when I met him in 81, he was just getting off the road full-time and was, trying to start running his own shows. And he wanted to get his own crew of guys that he could rely on and kind of, make sure that they were where they needed to be. Because what motivated him to do that was he was running a show, and Spike Huber, who was Dick the Bruiser's son-in-law, was pretty popular in the Midwest at the time. He was a pretty big babyface. Jim had promoted him for a show, and then Dick pulled him at the last second without giving Jim the heads up, and then was sending him to St. Louis. And, Jim got upset about that and decided he'd just get his own crew of guys that could control and do something with himself. So when I had first met Jim, I tried to convince him to train me, and he wouldn't agree to do it. He had no interest, and then that's what changed, and that's how I was able to finally convince someone to train me, and that was where it began.
Did you go to the camp with Ole and Gene before or after that?
Before. I went down for, wasn't a camp, it was a tryout, they called it, down in Charlotte, which was basically just, where they were going to blow guys up and stretch them, and then, if one guy would, if anybody would survive, they would take them and, see what they could do with them. And it was funny, years later, I was riding with Sandy Scott in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Sandy and I developed a really close relationship, and I told him the story about going down there, and there was one guy, there was a young black guy that he had taken an interest in. He was the only guy that really kind of made it, and he had set him aside. And I was talking to Sandy, and Sandy brought up the fact that he remembered seeing Ole bring this kid into the local YMCA, because you got to understand, back then, the only place you really worked out or trained was the YMCA. Wrestlers didn't have schools, like there wasn't the proliferation of schools like there are now, because the business was so closed. So, they would bring guys into the local YMCA, and I guess he lasted maybe 2 or 3 workouts, and then he never showed back up again after that.
Was it these early experiences? Is that what drove you to what you do today, which is run arguably one of the best training facilities in the U.S. in OVW?
I guess it's just my love for the wrestling business. That's what's drove me to, want to pass it on and try to pass on the real essence of the art of professional wrestling. I think it's kind of being lost, like I said, with the proliferation of wrestling schools and the fact that these days anybody can basically just rent a building and, regardless of their amount of experience, they can, and what type, that's another thing, what type of experience, they can proclaim that they're a trainer. And these young kids who have aspirations and hopes, that someday they can become a superstar. They come running and want to be trained. They're basically brought into a ring, and in about a matter of a week or two, they're taught how to what we call take a bump, which they think is about how to land, when it's really how to control yourself physically. And then they're taught to hit the ropes and, a couple wrestling moves and some spots, and then maybe a month later they're in their first match. And it's unfair to these prospective athletes, these young men and women, I feel, because they're not really being taught or have an understanding of what they're being taught, or why they should understand it or know it to really have a chance at being successful. And I mean really, truly successful. When you go to a platform like WWE, you have such an incredible opportunity, regardless of what the popular conception is. When you walk out in that ring, that is 100% on you to make the most of that opportunity. That every time you go to that ring, it's an opportunity. And, you can become the thing that people are tuning in every week to see. You can become the thing that people are buying a ticket to watch. And there's nothing anybody can do to stop that, and there's nothing anybody can do to help you do it either. You've got to be willing and be able to do it and understand how to do it on your own.
Now, Al, I'm kind of curious, all your years in wrestling and now training, is there something you have a preference to, training or performing?
I don't really have of course I love to perform. I mean, there's no bigger rush in the world than to go out there and be in front of an audience and connect with them, emotionally, and get them to elicit a response and a reaction and tell a story and have them really emotionally connected and be involved in it. There's nothing like that. But it's very rewarding to, train these young men and women, let them benefit from where you make your mistakes, and watch them go on and succeed. It's a thrill too. And I try to explain to them, every person that I train, and I've been pretty prolific as far as training. I mean, I have a lot of people that have went on to have very successful careers that I've trained, and I tell them all that their success is my success. I'm never going to lie to them, never going to mislead them. I'm never going to, I'm always going to be honest with them. I'm going to set standards for them, because when I was brought into the wrestling business, the people that brought you in were held personally accountable for everything you did. To this day, so the old timers, if they hear this interview and they don't like something that I said, they'll call Jim Lancaster, and then Jim Lancaster's going to call me. And I'm going to have to explain, because I'm a reflection on him. As long as I'm in this business, I'm a reflection on him and his professional accomplishments. And back in the day, if you screwed up and you hurt business, well, then Jim would get blackballed. He didn't get booked anymore, because the heat would go on him, because they would assume it's his responsibility to make sure that I didn't screw up like that. So I still hold that attitude to this day, that these people are very much a representation of me, and that they definitely, unquestionably carry my reputation around with them. And so I'm going to do absolutely everything I can, even sometimes in spite of them, to ensure that they have the best possible chance to succeed, no matter what the degree is, and be a professional representation in the wrestling business.
That's interesting. I think I actually did hear one of the wrestlers one time said, might have been Nash or someone, that it was a Jody Hamilton guy, and that actually opened some doors for him. They're like, oh no, he's polite, he knows the protocol, he's a Jody Hamilton guy. So
that's right.
Yeah,
that'll open doors for you. And if you put out enough bad guys, it'll close doors too.
Right.
And I'm not gonna let that happen. I'm not gonna let people use my name and then it start closing doors because of them being irresponsible. So
now Al,
to that end, that's why I apologize, but to that end, that's why we've taken great time and effort and expense. It's taken us over a year to get accreditation by the state of Kentucky, the proprietary education office, as an actual accredited trade school.
Oh, wow.
It's an effort. We're the first and only one in the world, and that was all done so that we could not just teach these young men and women skills in the ring, but to teach them skills backstage too, so that it would give them even a better understanding of what it is they're doing in the ring and be better performers, but also to give them more assets within the wrestling business and entertainment business and the broadcasting business to be able to, when their in-ring careers come to an end, to be able to pursue something else and have opportunities outside of the ring.
Al, I'm sorry to interrupt. Now, like an old-timer like myself, I'm not that old, I'm only 43, but someone who I'm obviously not going to return to the ring anytime soon. If I wanted to come down there and learn to do the backstage stuff, do you have programs set up where somebody can come and actually learn the backstage by itself?
Yes, they can come and learn that. They still participate in the in-ring classes. They just don't physically participate in the in-ring classes. What they do is they sit and they take notes. It's so that way you have a better understanding of what it is we're really selling in wrestling and how you go about doing that, so that when you're backstage and you're either producing or you're directing or you're running a camera or you're doing lighting or you're doing writing, you have a feel, a sense, an understanding of what the product is and how to best approach it and sell it so that it comes across and makes a complete picture. It's kind of hard if you've never driven a car, you've never sat in a seat, you've never experienced that feeling. It's very hard for you to be a car salesman. Successful car salesman. It's just that simple. You've never drank a beer. How are you going to go around and be a beer distributor? You know what I mean? It's hard to sell an experience if you've never properly done it. Now, you can do it. There are lots of people today that do it, but they don't. There's a certain essence to it that you need to feel and understand to really, really get it across. And that way, the more you can grasp that, the more successful you are even backstage.
Plus, it's interesting too because you're giving these guys training on everything, and if you think about it, how many times? I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, obviously, but how many times has an announcer unexpectedly ended up being a part of an angle or something? You're almost kind of preparing people for the unexpected, possibly too. It seems
sure. And there's nothing. And listen, everything is possible in wrestling. Every time, it's a matter of the right thing at the right time for the right reason, and it could create a completely different opportunity that creates a completely different doorway for your career to expand exponentially, or for you to fail miserably. Think of the wrestlers, especially in recent years, like even I myself and Taz made that transition to being commentators. And then think of all the, Corey Graves and all these other ones that have made that transition into being commentators and now have careers doing that. You walk in the door with those skills already in your back pocket, then when opportunities present themselves, you can capitalize on them and still have a career outside of the ring.
So you're giving them the best tool that they could have, which is preparation.
Yes, preparation and the benefit of having instructors who have actual experience. Because I've said this 100 times, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Having an access to information does not equate to having knowledge over a subject. I hate to break it to everyone that's on the internet, but you can access as much information as you want about any topic you want, and that does not make you an expert on it. Having information and then the commensurate amount of experience, even bad experience where you screwed up, gives you knowledge, gives you an understanding on a level that just acquiring the information through a book does not.
Well, that's funny, Al. Actually, I was saying to someone the other day, almost any job I've ever had in my life, too, when I was training to do something. I felt I've learned more through messing up a lot of times. Like, oh, I'm not going to do that again. And you learn more sometimes too.
Absolutely. It's no different than when you have kids and you tell the kid over and over again, don't touch the stove, it's hot, don't touch the stove, it's hot. And sometimes you got to let them touch the stove. It ain't going to kill them. So they can understand and have a relationship to the term, what is hot and what it means because of your warning, that it's now dangerous because it kind of stung. It hurt them.
Al, that's excellent points. I think that anybody who's been in the business for any amount of times at this point realizes that there's no school out there that's actually better than the one that you're running. All you have to do is look at the athletes that have come out of it and look at your storied career to understand that. We were wondering if you had any stories from either early in your career or after your WWE run from when you worked on the indies for us.
I got plenty of stories. I mean, there's always stories. I mean, good God, this business, it got to a point that I got to where I started embracing the ridiculousness and the unusual, and almost would be disappointed if I went to a booking and nothing happened. Ordinary. And I would be disappointed, you know. I went out for one of the guys who's kind of like a protege of mine, Matt Yaden, who runs Rocky Mountain Pro, and he's doing really well out there. And the first time I went out for like two shows, and the first show I was like, you know, you guys do great. I mean, you run a professional thing, and you know, I'm just really disappointed. And he goes, why? I go, because I don't have any stories. Like, you don't have any you know, eccentric or goofy people here. And he goes, don't worry, I'll make a call. So he calls this kid who shows up because he tells me that the kid believes that he's a ninja, and will tell you that he's, you know, trained as a ninja and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, I can't wait to have a conversation with this guy. So of course I immediately sit down and start talking to him, and it takes a minute, but I'm listening to him tell his life story to me, and I suddenly realize, hey, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. And he keeps talking, and then it hits me. He's telling me the screenplay to a 1980s movie called American Ninja. The entire screenplay is his life story.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, this is fantastic. So later, I see him over there, and he's doing like katas, and he's opened the door. And this is in a hockey arena, so the walls are made of cinder blocks. So he's over there, and he's got the door open, and he's swinging he's doing like a karate chop at the door frame, the concrete block. And I'm like, watching him do it a couple times. I go, you can break concrete blocks with your hand? He goes, oh yeah, I've done it before. I go, really? He's like, yeah. I go, well, you got to show me. I mean, come on, man, you got to show me. So he lines up, and he just, all of a sudden, you just hear, he hits his hand, and he could tell it hurt, and he goes, I go, what happened? It didn't break. He goes, I was not focused. I go, well, you got to focus, man. You got to pull yourself together and, see if you can do it again. So this guy, listen, nobody ever should listen to me. So he opens the door further and he steps back. Now he's going to really put some stank on it. Mm-hmm. And he's really, I don't know how he's not hyperventilating while he's doing it, because he's breathing so deeply. He finally lets go, and you just hear this crack, and his hand looks all misshapen, the bottom two fingers, and he just walks over real quick and picks up his phone and starts touching it, playing with it, but you can see the other two fingers are sticking out. He literally broke his hand trying to prove that he could. And I'm like, what happened? They didn't break. And he's like, sometimes, I just can't focus. And I said, I understand, man. That happens all the time. So,
oh, my God.
You broke the American Ninja.
I didn't. He broke himself.
Yeah, that's true.
Facilitate his belief that he could.
Al, that's actually kind of an interesting segue for me, because I love pro wrestling, but I'm also an MMA fan over the last few years, too. A buddy of mine was telling me that you actually talked about doing some underground fighting in your book. And I was just wondering how that came about. And, do you have some a particular martial arts experience that you know? And
I trained in jiu-jitsu, and I trained in Kempo karate, and, plus I've got about 3 or 4 other belts that I bought at JCPenney's. They mean nothing. unless you keep up with the training, it's not like, it's any other skill. But, I'm not real proud of it, but at the time I had opened up my school in Ohio and was taking a ring down to every Monday night. This bar would run like a tough man contest. So I'd bring my ring down there. I'd set it up by myself and I'd hang out. One of the bar owners also ran basically like garage fights and, found out I was a wrestler and was like, hey, would you like to make some extra money? And explained it to me. And so, the first night I went and I basically had done some boxing, but not a lot. And, didn't fare too well. Took a lot of punches. Lost that one. And then it just so happened that where I had my wrestling school, in the front of the building was an old boxing gym. And a very old trainer named Mr. Akers was a wonderful old guy. And a guy by the name of Mr. Bazell, who was he would spar with Muhammad Ali. They were trainers up there, and so I went up and I would, during the day when I didn't have anybody in the wrestling school, I would go up and spend time with them, and they started showing me how to slip punches and things like that. And so the next time I, kind of did a little better, not getting hit as much, hitting more, and then I thought, well, screw this, and I just ducked under and I dropped behind the guy and, choked him out. That took place in an uproar because, I didn't realize there were rules, but apparently I thought there were no rules, but then people were hot, but they were also excited, and it was something different because at that time, MMA wasn't a big thing. And as a result, they wanted me to come back. So I'd done a couple more of those kinds of things, and it went on for a few fights, and then a couple brothers got upset and confronted me at the bar one night, and we got into a situation, and that didn't go well, and I was like, enough of this. I'm done with it. So that's why I say this, real fights suck. The work fights, wrestling, it's so much more fun.
We were talking before with some other interviews about creative seems to come up a lot. John Moxley had recently done an interview with Jericho where, he had basically said he was very thankful for his time in WWE. But he talked about one of the main issues he had was with creative. You had a lot of different characters. I'm just curious, we're not trying to make you bury anybody, but creatively, what are some maybe things you didn't like or did like?
The only issue I ever had was that nobody ever really spoke to me. Nobody ever talked, and that was partly, I admit to it, I talk about it in my book, that, it was also my fault because I never asked questions. I should have a lot of times in a lot of situations where this came to them and go, hey, okay, what is it we're doing? Why are we doing this? What are you wanting out of it? What direction are we going? Things like that. But I literally would show up at TV and I never knew what was happening. Nobody ever spoke to me. Nobody ever contacted me. I remember doing some pre-tape with Hunter and Stephanie, and Hunter alluding to, this is an opportunity for a spot or something before a cage match with Jeff Hardy, and Matt Hardy was involved, and Marlena, and I'm thinking, what the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean? I had no idea. And then I find out years later, there was a rumor that I was being considered for a spot in DX, and I'm like, nobody told me. I had a thing where I showed up and they just, you're going to walk down, with a Vince McMahon suit on and his rubber mask on, you're going to go to the ring, and I'm like, okay. And Vince is going to come out and ball shot you, and I'm like, all right. And, again, my fault. I should have stopped and went, hey, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? But nobody called me on the phone. Nobody discussed anything with me. They just literally threw me in places and made, and had me doing things. And again, I take the responsibility for not asking it, but, everybody brings up characters and stuff that I did, but a large part of that was that they were trying to find a voice, a character, something you could describe me with that would connect with the audience. And, like everybody does talks about the avatar, and that was my fault. If I knew then what I know now, I could have utilized that and made that more successful. But at that time, I had spent 14, 15 years as a heel and being a smart-ass chicken shit heel. And now all of a sudden I'm thrust into a situation where I'm supposed to be a babyface, but not, carry a mask out, but then put it on, then wrestle with it, then take it back off. And that's all the direction you're given, And it's up to you then to make the most of that and create something out of it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's on 100% on you. And I know things have changed up there now where they have more of a direct hand. I think they overproduce the talent, but I know that's because they don't feel confident that the talent are understand what it is they're really out there to try to do. And I do understand that the reason they don't is because that's not being taught anymore. The talent are now performing like, I just got to go out there and have a really good match. And that's not it. You've got to go have a really good match. You have to have a good match that motivates people to want to see you again. And that's a different mindset. That's a different approach. You can have the greatest match in the history of wrestling. Nobody paid to see it. What does it matter? Or if you had it in a building that seats 5,000 people, and let's say 5,000 people showed up to see that greatest match in the history of wrestling, and then next month you showed back up and only 800 people showed up, then how great was that wrestling match?
Oh, exactly.
The purpose, the sole reason, the absolute pure existence of a wrestler is to do one thing, and that is to use that time in the ring to motivate someone to leave their home, the comfort, security, and safety of their home, drive to a building, pay money to park, to pay money to get in the building, to sit in a seat that you don't want to sit in. Let's face it, guys, you don't want to sit in those seats. They're the shits. And you want to sit around people you don't want to sit around, and pay for food you don't want to eat to watch that guy do his job.
Oh, 100%, Al. And I can tell you that we were both fans going back, like we said, to Smoky Mountain. And to watch you explode the way you did coming out of the ECW arena and make the most out of a mannequin head, absolutely phenomenal. The way you connected with the audience, whether it was just, I don't know, you just had that connection with people that made all of us get up on our feet and cheer. So you definitely did.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you definitely put our asses in the seats, I can tell you that.
Well, it took a lot of years and a lot of mistakes, and even once I had gotten something like that, still trying to understand what it was I had and be able to capitalize on it, in which, if I had understood more, and again, if I knew as much as I do now, based on my experience as I would have been, I could have capitalized on a lot more of those opportunities that were given to me, and I could have made much more of it than what I did. So, but I'm not complaining. I haven't done as much as some, but I've done a lot more than many, and I've lasted a lot longer than most. So,
we appreciate everything you even giving us some time this week. I don't want to keep you too long. So just one more thing before we have you promote anything.
Sure.
Doing a holiday episode coming up for Thanksgiving, so we've been asking a lot of guests. Is there anything you're thankful for?
Well, I'm thankful for my wife and my family. Can't be thankful enough for them. That's the truth. I mean, I'm really blessed to have them, and thankful for my health. I'm thankful that I have gotten to be a professional wrestler for as long as I've gotten to be it, and to do the things that I love to do as long as I've gotten to do it. And now I get to own OVW and help young men and women try to go out and do the same things that they want to do.
Is there anything you want to promote, Al?
Oh, God, lots of things. My book's out there. You can get it on Amazon. It's called Self-Help. I wanted to call it How to Take Crap and Make Shoe Polish and Other Life Lessons I Learned from Wrestling, but the publisher didn't want to do that, so they decided to call it Self-Help. You can read even more ridiculous stories, like a 3-hour car ride with 6 midgets that involved almost one of them dying and me getting banned from IHOP, and different taser stories where I got people tasered. One that everybody likes is where a promoter and his son were tag team champions and had cowboy gimmick, and they rode horses to the ring, and the ensuing ridiculousness that happened from that was pretty funny. And OV Wrestling, OVWrestling.com, Ohio Valley Wrestling. That's OVW. If you guys have an interest, you can go on YouTube. We are live every Tuesday night on WBNA Channel 21 here locally in Louisville, and we're live every Tuesday night on YouTube. You just got to go to OVW TV on YouTube, and you can watch it live with the rest of everybody else. And ASWA.live is the certified state-accredited trade school, which is in association with OVW, if you want to go and find more information about that. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, it's The Real Al Snow. I do have the check marks and all of that now, but before I had to call myself The Real Al Snow because there were some fakes, and I would actually message them and go, look, I don't mind you doing this, but if you're going to fake being a celebrity, don't you think you should put the bar a little higher? I mean, come on. I'm not even going to fake being me. So why would you?
That's perfect, Al. I appreciate it, man. You've been very kind. I can't say it enough, man. We appreciate it a lot. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you guys for giving me the time. I appreciate you guys, keeping me alive and keeping me relevant out there.
All right, so that wraps us up for this week. Thank you again for listening to the Working Fans Podcast. So as always, you can find us on Twitter at FansWorking. Our Facebook page is Working Fans Wrestling Pod. We have email where you can reach out to us and let us know what you think also. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, workingfanswrestling_pod. And then as always, please continue to listen to us on Anchor.fm, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, all your major platforms. If you're following us on Apple Podcasts, which we are also on now, and YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us bring you these podcasts where we get to talk to you and talk with you every week.